kidding. Hey guys! Welcome back to part 2 of the studio build log concerning the 2 streamers, 1 CPU. We're happy to report that the project has been a huge success, but that isn't to say it wasn't without its flaws and, you know, tough moments. It wasn't a flawless victory. We had quite a few obstacles and hiccups to overcome along the way. Through some painstaking trial and error, we were able to get it all figured out. So I know the first thing on a lot of you guys' minds is going to be, how's the performance? And of course we've got benchmarks. We're going to show those a little later in the video, and we'll have some timestamps in the description down below that you can jump straight to those benchmarks if you want to see them. But I first wanted to discuss some of the issues that we ran into and kind of briefly how we overcame those. And then also, while it's not really meant to be a tutorial, I also wanted to show you guys some of the settings we ended up running in Proxmox specifically. So these are the settings we ended up actually running in totality. You can see we passed through some USB ports. We've got 2 bridge adapters for the Ethernet ports. We're only running 2 of those instead of 3 like originally planned due to some IOMMU issues. This is the first setup of Windows, and basically you'll notice that this is running through VNC. There's a built-in VGA to VNC kind of adapter built into the virtual machines. So the first thing we needed to do was install Windows, and you'll see that more or less it's the same as installing on bare metal, with the exception of we needed to add this driver in order to use the SSDs that are being passed through. And you can see this is the Red Hat VirtIO SCSI controller. Once this is installed, then the Windows guest is able to see the SSDs. Once I deleted the information that was already there, I then had to format just as you normally would and click install. I'm not going to bore you guys with the install process of Windows. I'm sure you're probably familiar with that, so we're going to jump ahead here, and this is the first time booting up. Of course, we're booting right now without the GPU passed through, and this is just so we can get Windows installed. Then once we have Windows installed, then we're going to shut it down after we set it up, and we're going to go ahead and enable the pass-through on the GPU, which is what you just saw there. The only hitch we ran into with the GPU pass-through is installing the latest AMD drivers. As you'll notice here in a moment, we essentially looked like everything was going okay, and then we got to about the 40% mark of the driver install process, which is where the cards are basically powered down and then started back up again with the new driver and control. And for whatever reason, these drivers do not rearm the cards correctly through the virtual machine with this particular version of the AMD drivers. So what happens effectively, and this was being captured right off of the HDMI out of the virtual machine's R9 Fury, you'll see it hits this 40%, gets stuck there for a moment, and then all of a sudden it just turns off the GPU and never turns back on. This actually ended up locking up the virtual machine entirely, forcing me to restart the hypervisor, or basically the entire actual computer. But once we got that resolved though, we had a couple other things to fix as far as getting the networking set up and getting NDI installed. We ended up running a Sandy Bridge, or telling the virtual machine we were running a Sandy Bridge chip in order to get SSE instructions and things like that. Host pass-through, if you're familiar with, basically tells the virtual machine that it's running an AMD Threadripper with only 10 cores, which confuses Windows Scheduler, I think, and leads to an instant blue screen to death. So we lied and said we're running a Sandy Bridge. What you're seeing right now is actually Firestrike running through NDI, so through the network, to the other system, which is actually handling all the stream and video editing that we do. And it's running Firestrike actually on both virtual machines simultaneously. So what you're going to see here in a moment, you'll see this switch. Right now you're watching the RX 580, as that's particularly Weasel 2's virtual machine. And then we'll switch over and you'll see Chronicle, and that's running the R9 Fury. So there's both of them running simultaneously, and both of those are being streamed through NDI to the stream computer, basically, that's off to the side that we also do our video editing on. And there are a couple frame hitches here and there, and that's mostly due to the networking. There may be some things we can smooth out later down the line in that. But the main thing I want you guys to really see is that this is running Firestrike twice over on 2 separate GPUs at the same time, live, and streaming that through the NDI algorithm, or it's whatever its compression algorithm is, with very minimal hit to the total results that we end up seeing in Firestrike. This is actually also running at 1x speed, so you can see the load times are more or less in line with what you would get with bare hardware. So the virtual machine's not really slowing much down there as far as load times go. It's not slowing a whole lot down as far as the GPUs go. I did do some comparisons of the R9 Fury before it was virtualized, and it was about a 5 to 8% loss in performance going through the virtual machine, but you can see there 11,336 final score, and the graphics score was 15,070, which I think is pretty much in line with what an R9 Fury would normally score. And then we're going to switch over here and you're going to see the RX 580, and that's 10,552 with a graphics score of 13,293, which is about in line for Firestrike with an RX 580. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with the results. It works well, and we can't wait to see you on the stream.